Hey everyone, as you might know or not know, WGP Osaka is happening this weekend, and I am definitely not going to that because it is in Japan, and it's hard to get there. But I can fantasize about what team I can bring to that tournament if I was to go, right? If I was to go. It's similar to like, I don't know, fantasy football, is it? Something like that? You're fantasizing about something, right? But it's also like a new format, a new meta, so you kind of have to predict what is a good deck to bring, and they also have that diversity cut thing, so it's a bit of a, you have to use a bit of your brain to figure out what to take, to bring the best deck, right? Today, that's what we're going to do, right? That's what we're going to do. And here you might see, I've already listed, I'm using Teammaker, right? But I've kind of listed all the relevant decks that, for each nation, that I can take. And yeah, pretty much ones that are new or have like topped or something like that. So we're gonna go from here. We're gonna cull ride lines, and then we're gonna figure out which is a great team, right? Now you might go, how come you didn't put any of the grade 4 decks in? You only put in the grade 3 one. Well, that's because in Japan the diversity cut only looks at the grade 3. So if you run grade 4 Nirvana or grade 3 Nirvana, it doesn't matter, right? I guess Magnolia is a better example. You know, some people run new grade 3 Magnolia and grade 4 Magnolia, but it doesn't matter which one you run, as long as you're running the grade 3 Magnolia in the ride line. That is what counts for the diversity thing, right? So, okay, let's kind of just take a look at these decks, right? What are the good decks and what are the bad decks, and what are we cutting out? So, right off the bat, I'm going to cut out a bunch of Shaman King decks, so I think the Hull deck and the Lifestyle deck just aren't as good as like the Tauren decks and the Yo decks, but I actually think the Yo deck is just like better than the Tauren deck. In terms of the Lyrical deck, I think I'm going to leave all the Lyrical stuff here for now, because Lyrical's really weird. A lot of them just randomly top all the time. For Dark States, let's get rid of Greedon and I'd say Chaos, right? These two are kind of just still not there yet, I think. Bear in mind that the WGP tournament Swiss rounds only last 4 rounds, so you can technically play a deck that is not super consistent and still do pretty well, especially in the team setting. And then for Dragon Empire, I'm unfortunately going to get rid of Eugene, because I still don't think it's good enough. And Jiva, right? Jiva. And I feel like I could kind of get rid of Bav Saga, even though like Bav Saga did top, right, in, I think, a regionals. But I still don't, I just don't think it's just that good enough yet. And maybe Tamayura. Or maybe Tamayura. I don't think we have the PR yet, so I think like Dragon Empire is pretty. Actually, let's just leave them here for now. Let's leave them here for now. We might have some inspiration. For Brandgate, I'm getting rid of Dionysos, right? We did see a bunch of Dionysos decks do well. We did see some Dionysos decks do well on like week 1 of one of the WGPs, and then kind of fit in like the 3rd slots. But I think it's like kind of memey, and you know, it's way past that. If you really want to bring something like that, do that. You can bring Wellstra, but I still don't think Wellstra is that good anyway. You have like really good Brandgate decks. You have like Seraph, Ava, Orphist, and Gravidia. And I mean, they vary in terms of power, but there's still good decks for Brandgate. So I think you have a lot to pick from there, right? And then for Kenny, you've got Youthberg, 100%. I think Youthberg, like, really, really good. We're getting rid of Thegria and Hexaorb. I think these currently just aren't as good if I was to take from the Kettle line. And then lastly, for the Stoicheia stuff, let's get rid of... I still don't think Leonon is good enough, right? Maybe it is. I'm still not a huge fan of the deck. I'm getting rid of that. Also, Zorga. Zorga, I'm going to get rid of it too. And Roa, right? Roa. So, like, Magnolia got some recent support as well for grade 3, so I think there might be something there. But Flagberg, Boy, I think that is a top tier deck. So, now that we have the decks, right? We have a bunch of these decks. Let's kind of move them around. Let's kind of define what is probably going to be the most played decks, like the best decks, the most played decks, and just kind of go from there. So Youthberg, I think a lot of people have said this is going to be a really strong deck. The new Flagberg support is really, really good. Nirvana still top tier. I think Seraph is a top deck as well, just because in the team format as well is really good. Basically, in teams, you definitely want to bring Brandgate anyway, because, you know, Elder Breath is just busted. And then for Dark States, I actually don't think there is any super top tier Dark States deck I want to say there is. And then Kyrie is also a pretty good deck. So I guess Overlord is also pretty good. But I think it's probably it's somewhere here. It's somewhere. Maybe I'll put this down here. I still think Nirvana is slightly better than Overlord. But I think this is what the top decks kind of look like right now. Now, let's kind of talk about what we have to bring. So we can only bring one deck, one ride line from each nation. So we can only bring like we have to bring 3 nations pretty much. And in my mind, I feel like, you know, we have to bring a Brand Gate because, again, Elder Breath is busted, and you randomly just get wins from that. And honestly speaking, all of the Brand Gate decks are pretty good. So I think personally, I'm definitely going to bring a Brand Gate. I really want to bring a Dragon Empire one as well, because if you look at the quality of Dragon Empire, there's definitely 2 good decks. And if we want to kind of talk about like deck theory on what to actually bring, so Swiss rounds in WGP go for around 4 rounds, and then if you go undefeated, you automatically make it in, and it doesn't really worry much about diversity. So if you bring the best decks, you will have, and just go undefeated, you are 100% in. If you don't go undefeated, then you are likely out. But in terms of how many teams go undefeated, it is around like 3 and 4. So you have a chance to sneak in if like not everyone brought like the best decks, right? So there's that. And then when you do make it into Top Cut, if you did bring the best decks, you do have an advantage because you just have the best deck, right? You're not bringing like a third deck that kind of is not as good. You just brought the best deck. So ideally, you'd probably just pick from here. You'd go like Nirvana, Seraph, and like, I don't know, a Youthberg or Flagberg. Either one. That's a really good team already, right? But let's kind of look at the kind of other decks that are pretty good, right? And maybe we can find something that will give us a slight edge while not nerfing us by much at all, right? So I think Yo, a strong tier 2 deck. Any of the lyrical ones kind of just are fine. So like Michu is fine. Personally though, I think like Michu's like on a level above the other 4. So if it was me personally, I kind of would leave it there, because technically speaking, we do have a lot of picks too. Barrow is definitely one of these near top decks, and Bruce has been doing very well as well. Gravidia used to be a really strong deck, but I feel like it might have dropped down now. I feel like a lot of the other ride lines have kind of caught up. And, you know, even though, like, Gravidia before, it got advantage, it got the retires. Technically, Youthberg can do that now, right? Except Gravidia just has a better overtrigger. And then the Brand Gate, I think other ones, Ava as well, can be a near top deck. And I think Bastion. And I think that's it. Out of all of these, I would pick this. There's one reason why I didn't pick Drajuld, is that I still don't think Drajuld is good enough. And also, a lot of people are going to bring Drajuld, because it's like week 1, right? It's week 1, so a lot of people are going to bring it. So let's kind of focus on these decks that are here, right? I'm going to kind of talk about the meta. So either we bring 3 of like the best decks to the tournaments, or we pick like we pick 2 of the best decks and 1 deck that is like still really, really good. Let me lower the let's kind of bring some decks, right? So here we go. So in my mind, I will definitely bring a Seraph, right? I'm probably gonna play the Seraph. That's just the reality, I think. And then let's kind of, I think it's still a bit cut off. Yeah, looks nicer, right? I'm definitely bringing Seraph, but it's not just because I think it's, you know, I'm definitely playing the Seraph, but I think in this format, when you have something like a Youthberg that I feel like is considered to be like one of the best decks, and a lot of people will be bringing it because, hey, it's a new deck hype as well. Especially when it's like good and it's hype, right? You saw like Kyrie's a lot. Youthberg will definitely be brought a lot, and Seraph can actually, like, Seraph is a pretty good deck out deck. So with the amount of advantage that Youthberg actually gains, I feel like you have a good chance of, you know, you have a good matchup against Youthberg. It's not a terrible matchup at all. And then against some of the other decks, like Flagberg, if they kind of mess up, you can kind of just control their resources and kind of do well. And then against every other deck, your Brandgate, you fill that Brandgate niche, and you can just beat them, right? So I feel like you do have to bring a Seraph. I would personally bring a Seraph. I know a lot of people have brought Seraphs, and I think a lot of people will bring Seraphs, right? That's just how it is. But it's definitely a deck that you kind of have to bring. The one thing, I personally will not bring a Youthberg in this format, because I feel like a lot of people do recognize Youthberg is strong, so they will kind of figure out ways to counter it. I would stick with something like a Nirvana or a Flagberg, right? Why Nirvana? One, it's just a nice, super solid deck that's been solid for ages, but you know, it's just hasn't fallen off. You've got a really, really good overtrigger, so yeah, it's great. But then Flagberg is insane in Japan, right? Flagberg, you got the PR, you got the new support. So I feel like Flagberg is definitely picking. I know a lot of people do bring this, and it's gonna be very strong. I think it's very strong. So I think in this case, I would actually bring the Flagberg. I would actually bring the Flagberg. It's just such a strong deck. And what is gonna be our third deck? What is gonna be our third deck? So it can be one of these three decks, right? It can be one of these three decks, but it could also be one of these decks that I feel like has potential. And I think the two decks that do have potential here is Barrow and Bastion. And why those two? Well, Bastion, you kind of just go first and still win. You still go first and win. The support, it did get support in the new set, so there could be some hype behind that. But remember, you can only pick one ride line for each nation. So if a lot of people are picking Youthbergs, they aren't picking Bastion, which means diversity-wise, you do better. At the same time, though, Bastion's like this Pepega deck that just randomly loses, and you go second, you feel bad, you cry. I don't know. I feel like maybe not Bastion because of that, but Barrow Magnus might be a pick. Right? Barrow Magnus might actually be a pick because one, Dark States, not that. Well, especially Barrow. Barrow is not that liked in Japan for some reason. It did get support though, which might mean a lot of people will be playing this. And there has been times when Barrow just randomly is played a lot at like a tournament. Like, I remember when Set 4 got released, a bunch of Barrows popped up in WGP Tokyo, the first tournament, and just took it. So this could just randomly pop up and win. But at the same time, I feel like there could be a lot of players playing like Jeweled, something like that. So I don't know. I feel like it just could be good, right? You go fast, you beat Youthberg before it sets up, right? You basically beat every deck before you set up. You consistently get 15. So maybe this is the deck. Maybe this is the deck to bring. And this is like a nice like tier 2. It's not like the best deck, but it's like a really, really good deck. You only have 4 rounds that you need to work with. So you don't need to play that much. You can high roll a bit. And then, you know, Barrow is a deck that kind of just doesn't care whatever it's up against. So I feel like, you know, these decks just seem like pretty good, especially if you expect you're going to play against a lot of good players as well. And in Top Cut, you might. Right? I think Top Cut is like top 16, right? Oh, no, top 8, my bad. Yeah, it's still top 8, but you know, look at these decks. Look at these decks. You got the Seraph deck that can kind of like play a bit of a longer game, but play a kind of a unique game that can kind of win again. That has good matchups against certain decks in the format. But then you have like Barrow, which is high roll, and then Flagberg, which is also kind of like a strong deck plus having the high roll as well. So it doesn't matter how good your opponent is, you can still kind of win like that. So I think this is the team. I think this is the team, right? Let me know what your team is in the comments below, right? Will you take Nirvana instead? I think Nirvana is still a really, really good pick. I'd probably, like, if I was to go like super meta dog, I'd be like something like this. Maybe something like this, right? I feel like, you know, this is the way. This is the way. You can afford maybe one loss if guys just get unlucky, but in Top Cut, you still have a good matchup against a lot of things. And yeah, that's it. Let me know, guys.